Mara Ellison never realized the last photograph taken of her would expose a ritual older than the town she lived in. Elias Granger thought he was investigating separate disappearances until he found the same symbol carved into every victim's final surroundings. Lena Rowe entered the abandoned hotel expecting dust and broken furniture, not a hidden room counting down to her own disappearance. Thomas Allais believed the lake was simply swallowing secrets, until divers dragged up the first face molded into a mask of terror. Nia Calder spent years studying sound forensics, but nothing prepared her for the tapes filled with breaths and footsteps that shouldn't have been there. Jonas Vick always searched for patterns, but the one he uncovered connected 4 silent crime scenes and a group that was never meant to be found. Ruth Marlowe walked into the forest cabin thinking it was abandoned. She walked out knowing someone had been listening to strangers for years. Caleb Winters had seen countless crime scenes, but none compared to the house where time froze and a family never moved again. Ilara Finch uncovered a countdown written in chalk, each number marking the final days of someone who was never supposed to exist. Detective Rowan Pike believed silence meant safety until he uncovered a group that turned silence into a weapon. The first case began in a quiet suburban town known for peaceful streets and friendly neighbors, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. That sense of calm shattered the moment officers stepped into a small, tidy house where time appeared to have stopped. Every clock, from the digital ones in the kitchen to the antique one mounted above the fireplace, showed the exact same hour and minute, frozen as if the world inside had paused in an instant. The unsettling details set the tone for what investigators were about to uncover. Inside, a family of 4 was found positioned in ways that suggested they had been carrying out their usual routines. One adult sat at a dining table with a book open, another lay on the couch as though resting, while the 2 children appeared to have been playing on the living room floor. Nothing was knocked over, nothing broken, and no signs hinted at any struggle. It was as if life had simply evaporated from the room. Detectives who entered described an overwhelming silence, a stillness so heavy it felt unnatural, almost staged. Yet nothing in the house suggested the family expected anything out of the ordinary. Their expressions were neutral, their bodies untouched by any visible force or cause. As investigators moved deeper into the home, they felt something they couldn't explain. Some described it later as a sensation of being watched, even though no one else was present. Others felt a strange pressure in the air, the kind that makes the skin rise with goosebumps. Officers searched for any clue that might explain the impossible scene, but every room looked perfectly organized, as if the family had maintained their home with care and routine. Food sat half-prepared in the kitchen, a television remote rested neatly on the sofa, and a load of laundry remained folded in a basket. The lack of disruption made the scene even more disturbing. It wasn't until a detective noticed a thin, barely visible seam along the basement wall that the investigation took a darker turn. Behind that hidden panel was a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement room, one that did not appear on any property records. The room was cramped and completely unlit, with concrete walls and a low ceiling that forced investigators to hunch as they entered. When flashlights illuminated the space, the team froze. The walls were covered with Polaroid photographs, hundreds of them, each capturing strangers in public places. People walking their dogs, shopping for groceries, sitting at bus stops, stepping out of their cars, unaware their images were being taken. No photo showed violence or confrontation, but the sheer number of candid images suggested careful planning and months, if not years, of secret surveillance. The most chilling part was that none of the photographed individuals matched the family living in the house, leaving investigators with a disturbing question: who had taken these pictures and why were they hidden here? As detectives studied the photos, they noticed patterns, similar angles, repeated locations, consistent lighting suggesting the same person had taken all of them. A few images appeared to have been taken from the same vantage point multiple times, as if the photographer returned to the same spots repeatedly, watching the same people until they disappeared from the pattern. It was clear the photographer had fixated on strangers, not the family found upstairs. Even after the investigation closed with no definitive answers, the case left a lasting mark on every officer involved. Many reported recurring nightmares of the silent house, the frozen clocks, and the countless faces staring from the basement walls. The lack of any logical explanation haunted them more than any evidence ever could. The mystery of who had watched all those people and what happened in the final moments before the clock stopped remained unresolved, leaving behind a chilling reminder that some horrors never reveal their truth. The second case began with a quiet morning on a remote lake surrounded by thick forest, a place known more for calm water and occasional fishermen than for anything unusual. As the sun rose, a fisherman noticed a dark object drifting just below the mist-covered surface. At first, he assumed it was debris or a lost piece of equipment, but when it floated closer, he felt a deep sense of unease. What he found would unravel one of the most disturbing mysteries the region had ever seen. Authorities arrived shortly after his report and pulled a sealed waterproof bag from the water. Inside were 3 masks molded directly from human faces. The material was cold, stiff, and flawless in detail, capturing every line, wrinkle, and expression of terror frozen at the moment it had been taken. The masks alone shifted the investigation from a missing persons search to something far more sinister. For several months before the discovery, people from nearby towns had been disappearing without any link between the cases. All the victims lived alone, had minimal social circles, and vanished without leaving a single meaningful clue behind. Their homes showed no forced entry, no sign of struggle, and nothing unusual enough to guide investigators. Rumors spread through the communities, with some residents whispering about a serial predator, while others believed the victims had chosen to leave their isolated lives behind. Authorities had no leads, and pressure mounted as the number of missing individuals grew. The discovery in the lake changed everything. Investigators brought in specialized dive teams to search the depths of the water, hoping the masks were not the only evidence waiting beneath the surface. The lake was colder than expected and unusually clear in certain areas, making the descent feel eerie and unnatural for the divers. After hours of searching, they found a metal cage anchored deep in the darkest part of the lakebed. The cage was large enough to hold a person, though no human remains were found inside. Instead, it contained personal belongings from the missing individuals' items small enough to be overlooked in everyday life but meaningful enough that each would have been carried regularly. Watches, necklaces, glasses, and keychains were arranged in a precise pattern that made no obvious sense. The placement felt intentional, almost ritualistic, as if each item had been positioned with care to tell a story that only the creator could understand. The divers noted that some objects had been weighted down while others were suspended on thin wires within the cage, creating a disturbing underwater display. Investigators theorized that the killer may have recreated the victim's final moments by constructing detailed scenes underwater. The masks, combined with the cage arrangement, suggested a desire to preserve fear, to freeze emotions the same way the lake preserved the mask's rigid expressions. The psychological impact on the dive team was immediate. 2 divers reported difficulty sleeping after the discovery and refused to continue participating in the investigation. They described a constant sensation of being watched during the dive, along with the oppressive silence of the deep water pressing against them. The investigation reached a standstill despite weeks of searching the surrounding forest, interviewing locals and reviewing previous missing person reports. Every piece of evidence pointed toward meticulous planning, yet no trace of the person responsible ever surfaced. The case ended without a suspect, without a motive, and without closure for the families involved. To this day, residents living near the lake avoid discussing the events, believing that whatever darkness lived beneath that water was never truly gone. The masks, the cage, and the chilling arrangement of personal items remain among the most unsettling pieces of evidence ever recorded in the area, leaving behind a mystery as deep and cold as the lake itself. The third case emerged from an abandoned hotel that had been left untouched for years, its hallways silent and its windows clouded with dust. The building was scheduled for demolition, and a crew arrived to begin clearing out the interior. As they moved from floor to floor, they noticed a door at the far end of a corridor that did not match any number listed on the blueprints. The handle was rusted, and the door showed no signs of ever being opened since the hotel's closure. Its presence alone raised questions, but the fact that it was completely unmarked made the workers uneasy. When they were unable to pry it open, they called authorities to investigate further.